everyone and welcome to another video. I am SimplyGee and today I'm in front of the camera because it is my 2,500 subscriber special. Today I'm going to be answering some of the questions you guys sent in and I hope you enjoy because there's a lot to get through. So first question comes from a SimplyGee who asks, is your name really G? Answer to that, very simple, is no. It's really a nickname of a nickname, a shortening of my actual name. So it's still somewhat related to my name, but not my name itself, obviously. And that's all you guys are going to get about that. It is still tangentially linked to my name, and it still is representative of myself, I believe, but it isn't really that close to what my actual name is. SimplyGee's second question is, have you ever had any other pets? And he's speaking about my dog, Poochie, who's the love of my life. I show her off a lot on social media, sometimes. But really the answer to that is not really. When I was a child, actually before I was born, my parents had a cat called Scooter Boy who they adopted after he was dumped as a kitten into their backyard, and he was in my life, as when I was born and for the year or so after. But then when we moved to Australia, we left Scooter Boy with my aunt, and she looked after him up until his death many years later. The only other quasi pet that we had was a wild but formerly domesticated bird called Dennis. He was a cockatoo, and he would come to our house and sort of want food and look around and react to us like he knew us. Obviously somebody's pet who managed to just escape or was let go or whatever, but he wasn't ever he was fairly aggressive, so we weren't ever able to actually get him into the house. So we never really truly adopted him, but he did hang around for quite a while when I was just starting high school. This was the former house to where we live now. But since then, Poochie, my dog, is the only real family pet we've had, and that was on purpose. My family or my parents didn't really want to buy a pet for us until we were responsible enough to look after it. So when we were, they did, and she's 14 years old now. She's very wonderful and sweet, but she is an old lady, and she is just really cute. I'll put her picture up somewhere on the screen. So the next question was submitted by RjavBot on Twitter. Thank you for this, and it is, what are your top 5 unlicensed or out of print manga that you'd like to see in print physically? So for this question I chose only unlicensed things. I also chose series that only have a few volumes out, and I had to write them down because there's too many for me to list off the top of my head. But the first one is Akaku Saku Koe, which is about a high school boy who, through the power of his voice, can bring life to inanimate objects. I really wanted to try this one out. It has, I think, 3 volumes and was written between 1998 and 2000. The reason I am so interested in this particular title is that it's a Yuki Midorikawa title, so the same mangaka as Natsume's Book of Friends, one of my all-time favorites. And just from that premise, it has a very similar feel to it, so I'd really like to give that one a shot. The second title is Aoi Hores no Hitomi, which is a historical drama currently ongoing in Harta. I believe there's 4 or 5 volumes out currently, and it's about the life of Hatshepsut. So I don't know, I think that's how I pronounce that name. Hatshepsut, who is a female pharaoh from ancient Egypt. She's an incredibly fascinating figure throughout history, but this manga follows her life sort of leading up to her becoming pharaoh, or really just her young life. And as I said, it's from Heart of Magazine, one of my favorite seinen magazines, and one that I think I'd really be interested in and enjoy. I do know somebody who is reading it and they are really enjoying it. So yeah, I'd like to check that one out if given the chance. Third is Giselle Elaine, which is an ongoing, I believe, historical slice of life drama about a young woman really like a teenage girl who is the landlady of an apartment building. So she's in charge of a lot of the going on in that particular building. She has a lot of people living in her building, and there's a lot of problems that arise from that. And she sort of has a helper or a problem-solving thing that she does. She wants people to bring their problems to her so she can fix them. Usually there's like weird, mysterious things that she has to track down, and that's really like in my wheelhouse. That sounds really interesting. I don't necessarily know if too many other people would want to read that, but again, that one only has a handful of volumes out, and is one that I would feel that fans of other like historical drama would also enjoy, or historical slice of life as well would enjoy that one. Number 4 is a very selfish one for me, and that is Koromo no Taion, or A Child's Temperature, which is by Fumi Yoshinaga, one of my all-time favorite mangaka, and I believe the only one of her manga that isn't available in English. It's a collection of short stories, a single volume, like a lot of the stuff that she does actually have available in English. So I'm just wondering why we never got that one. It is older, and she's not exactly the most well-known mangaka, so I can understand why it hasn't been published, but comparatively to like some of the other titles that she has that have been published, like Not Love But Food Makes Me So Happy, and things of those lines, it makes me wonder, why is this one not available? Either way, it's one that I'd really like to see. And finally is Shonen Note, which is Yuki Kamitani's 9-volume musical shonen about a choir, and in particular 2 boy sopranos, and sort of their because of their age, their transition away from being able to sing soprano and things like that. I was in the choir when I was in sort of middle school / high school. We don't really have middle school here, but that period of time, and I really enjoyed it. I've always been very like into choir singing, or I was when I was younger, and so I was like, man, I really want to read this. Plus, of course, I'm a huge fan of Yuki Kamitani. I adore their work, and I hope that with Our Dreams at Dusk, we will have more of their work available. So that would be my first one. They also have another manga ongoing that I'd love to read as well. Chris on Twitter at BonoboChris asked, did Manga Plus and the new Shonen Jump app impact the way you read and collect manga? Short answer is yes, absolutely, in a huge way. Mainly because I've mentioned this before, I do actually enjoy quite a few shonen titles, but I don't really actively buy a lot of them, and I don't have a huge amount of them in my collection, especially the very well-known ones, the big hitters, things like Bleach, Naruto, One Piece, but even currently popular titles like The Promised Neverland or Dr. Stone or Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, I don't have in the collection just because I don't have the space, and they're not like super duper high priority. We'll absolutely read those series again, but because of the availability on apps like Shonen Jump and Manga Plus, it's meant that I've had the opportunity to support those series legally without having to invest $10 or $15 every couple months to buy the new book. Some of the series that I do keep up to date with on Shonen Jump in particular are things like Demon Slayer, The Promised Neverland, Dr. Stone. I'm hoping to read JoJo now that the first 3 parts are available on Shonen Jump. I also read the several volumes of Golden Kamuy that on the Shonen Jump website, because I don't believe that's on the app yet, just because of, I guess, mature content rating. But I've read several volumes of that through there. I've also read the entirety of Astra Lost in Space, which is why I actually bought it, as you can see back there, because I enjoyed it so much. I'm also up to date with Haikyuu, so I'm actually I think, 1 volume behind on the print edition for that, and I don't feel the need to like buy those volumes immediately thanks to having that available on Shonen Jump, as well as My Hero Academia and other titles as well that I'm wanting to try. I'm sure I'll get to like Naruto and One Piece at some point. Dragon Ball, of course, is like one of the main ones that I do hope to read in the future. But even things like Assassination Classroom as well. As I said, there's a lot of shonen out there. Viz puts out a lot of Shonen Jump's catalog, but for me, I already have such a large collection. I don't have the space for a lot of titles, especially if they're, you know, 60, 70, 80 volumes long or more. It's just, I don't have the room. Manga Plus, of course, does have a lot of those titles that I've already mentioned, but the way I actually utilize that service is with their more platform-specific titles, so things from the Shonen Jump Plus catalog that aren't available in Viz's app. So my absolute favorite, and one that is near and dear to my heart now, Ao no Flag, or Blue Flag, is definitely one I recommend everyone try. I also really enjoy Moonland, which is a gymnastics manga. I've been enjoying Sign of Abyss, or Sign of the Abyss, which is a fantasy series, and also Soloist in the Cage, which is really, really good, especially if you like sort of darker action series. I wouldn't really compare it to Attack on Titan, but it has similar vibes. The two settings are completely different, and the setups are also completely different, but I don't know, it made me feel or think about that, and I do enjoy it way more than Attack on Titan. I also read Curtains Up, I'm Off, which is about a school drama club, and that was really great. Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting titles that I don't think a lot of people really know much about, because they don't have the hype of like being in weekly Shonen Jump, but they're ones that come out monthly or every 2 weeks, and I'm really enjoying, and you can't read legally anywhere else. So check those ones out, especially because all of them that I've mentioned. Oh, Hell's Paradise is also really good. Try that one. And that's also on Viz's website because of the mature content, but it is just on the Manga Plus app as well. Any of those, they have all the chapters. Check them out. They're very, very good. Prate Mazumdar, apologies if that is totally incorrect, asked are you excited about the new Death Note one-shot coming out soon? And this was a question on Twitter. I didn't actually know there was a new Death Note one-shot coming out soon. I looked it up. Seems like that's the case. If it's available somewhere where I'm able to read it, I definitely will check it out. I have mentioned before, but Death Note is quite nostalgic to me. It's sort of the series that got me into anime, and I guess not so much manga, but it was definitely my first anime. And it's one that, despite my problems with the Obata and Oba, writer-artist team, I do think is their best work, and mainly because of sort of the premise and the characters in that series, and the fact that they're meant to be terrible people. At least the main character is meant to be a terrible person. It's very interesting that Death Note, despite being like quite a lot older than their current or more recent titles like Bakuman and Platinum End, are the ones that people remember and have nostalgia for and have a huge high regard for. Yeah, I will definitely give it a look if it is available, whether that be on the Viz Shonen Jump app or in another way. But I don't actually currently own any of the Death Note manga. My sister owns the singles, I believe. I think so. But I don't actually own the manga. So yeah, as to whether or not I'd like actively search it out, I don't think so. But if I came across it somewhere, I'd give it a look. It depends on who it's focused on as well. So next are a couple questions from Bizarre Individual. So his first question is, how do you keep track of all the new releases? Do you list them or do you just remember? So I don't just remember them. That would be a crazy talent that I do not possess. No, I actually, probably every 4 months, I do actually have a notebook. And nothing fancy, just like a spiral bound little notepad like this. And each page I break into 3 months, so like January, February, March, and with a bunch of space underneath the heading. And I do that for the whole year, so January to December. And then every 3 or 4 months I actually go into Book Depository, because that's generally where I'm buying my things. I go to the manga section and I filter it down to only pre-orders, and then I sort by date or release date. So then I have an idea of all of the stuff that is coming out in the future. So then I look at everything. I go through the website and I see like what's coming out in May, June, July, and every title or every book that is a title that I'm currently releasing or currently following as it's being released, I should say, or one that is a debut that I'm really interested in, then I'll I'll write that down and I'll chuck it there. And so I have a ongoing, list of prospective titles for me to buy. Some of the times I don't buy everything that I write down, whether or not it's because I change my mind on how I'm reading it. So whether like if it's a Viz title and I am just reading it on the Shonen Jump app, so I don't feel the need to like pick up volume 20 of My Hero Academia, I can just sort of disclude that one. But then I also have titles that I am actively interested in and looking at. So things like a lot of the Shoujo Beat titles that I'm following, a lot of their debuts. So Snow White with the Red Hair or A Blank Canvas are two very recent ones. But everything. So whenever I buy them, whether it be on Book Depository or through Amazon or whatever else, I tend to put like a little dot next to the name. And then when I receive them, so when I buy them and have paid for them, not just when I pre-order them, I put a dot next to it. And once I receive it, I put a line, like a couple lines through the actual name. So I know what I've bought, I know what I've gotten. I don't purchase multiple copies of the same thing. I am fairly good at like remembering stuff that I've got in the collection. So that's never really happened to me before where I've actively bought multiple copies. There's been some times when I've been sent multiple copies of things for some reason. I don't know why. But it does mean that I have a list. I know what I'm doing or where my money's going towards, what I've spent or what I'm hoping to spend within a month, and I can budget for it as well, adjust my budget or adjust my expectations for that month. I do also have sort of like a separate list for all of the older manga that I am hoping to buy. So Kakaishi is sort of really the only one that comes to mind. I also need to pick up some volumes of Sunny. And so when I have those volumes, I have the title, and then I have like 1 to I don't know, 35, which is Kakaishi. And every time I get a volume, I cross out the number, so I know like how much I have and how much I need. That may be a little bit like too anal retentive for some people, or too like over organizing things, but it helps me to keep track of this hobby and, as I said, prioritize. So that's how I keep track of all of the new releases as well as the older releases that I'm hoping to get. Bizarre Individual's second question is, what's your sister's favorite manga? I had to ask her because I did not actually know this, but I will preface this by saying, if you guys haven't watched the OMG podcast, there's the first episode out. We are hoping to film another one, or record another one, I should say, very, very soon. But that's a anime podcast that I do with my sister Em, where we talk about the anime that we've recently watched. And we mention in that video and in the future videos, I'm sure, that she is not really a manga reader. She's not really a reader in general. She doesn't read for pleasure, comparatively to me, who has always read for pleasure. So her perspective on a lot of titles, a lot of anime, are that she doesn't really have any background. She doesn't read the manga for it. The few manga that she does read are recommendations from myself, usually short, very similar, like she likes similar things that I do in my media. So she likes character-driven stuff. She likes things she can really get invested in. But because, as I said, she doesn't read a lot of manga, like the longest manga she's ever read was Full Metal Alchemist. That's 27 volumes, and that was like honestly a chore for her to get through. I used to have to like actually actively encourage her to read the newest volume, and she was buying it, and it's her copy. She was just like, oh, I don't want to read it, I'm just and yes, she doesn't actually buy a huge amount of manga. She only has probably maybe a dozen manga series in her own personal collection, so things like Fullmetal Alchemist, Jormungand, I think that's it. She has a good chunk of Black Butler. She has the entirety of Death Note, things like that. And so now, generally the stuff that she's reading, she reads a lot of like BL stuff. She really enjoyed Go for Nakamura, things like that. But her favorite manga, as I said, I had to ask, she told me is Pluto, which she is reading. I own the series. She really, really loves it. I think it really surprised her. Not only did she enjoy sort of the whole setting and the characters, but she was so shocked that it made her cry. She really, really got invested into it. And I honestly don't know if she's finished it, but it's definitely one that she looks upon very fondly. And again, it's not super duper long. It's only 8 volumes, and it's not overly dense or complex. Like, it's not. I think she was scarred as well from Bakuman, which is just like text dumps. I mean, that's a bad series anyway, but if you're reading the page, it's just text dump upon text dump of dialogue. And she just would read, I think she read 1 volume of that and was like, I can't do this. It took me like 4 hours to get through. I can't do this. So yeah, she doesn't appreciate very wordy manga either. But yeah, so I would say, and she said, Pluto is by Naoki Urasawa is her favorite. Third question from Bizarre, I sort of covered a little bit, but the third question is, what tastes do you share or not agree on with M, my sister? We have very, very similar tastes when it comes to media. I would say that sometimes the stuff that we enjoy about a certain title may be slightly different. Like, I might enjoy particular character dynamic, whereas she enjoys other character dynamics, or she enjoys like a different plot point. But generally we enjoy the same shows for the same reasons. I would say that she's more so like a horror fan than I am. She has more guts when it comes to watching like dumb, schlocky horror movies that are full of jump scares. I know they're dumb, but I just don't like watching them because I'm a wuss and will jump at anything, even if I know it's coming. Whereas I enjoy maybe a little bit more, I don't even know, because we are so very similar. Even because, like, I don't dislike horror movies, but I like thriller or like psychological horror more than like the gross out or like jump scare or gory horror. And I wouldn't say that M enjoys those films, but I think she can handle them better than I do. I think she has a higher tolerance to like dumb Korean dramas where there's always some stupid thing going on and nobody communicates and there's a really dumb gimmick. And they're fun and cheesy, but M has watched so many of those, and she actively looks for them on Netflix. She also actively looks for like the really, really terrible, like almost propaganda Christian films that are on Netflix, not because she's particularly religious, but because she finds it very funny type of subgenre and like almost fascinating, and she makes fun of them a lot. I don't have that much time in my life, so when I watch something or when I read something, I tend to want to read it for, I don't know, less memey reasons. We're not that different insofar as I said, our media goes. I wouldn't even say we're that different in our personal opinions or our personalities either. She is more outgoing and social than I am, but you know, there's things that I am also better than she is at. So I think we're a pretty balanced pair, and I think we get on very, very well. Considering some siblings and some sisters that I know, we get on way better than them. And that's something our family has always sort of prioritized, is having a very close relationship with your siblings, because friends, you know, can come and go, but siblings are supposed to be in your life for the entirety of it. So you want to hope to get along with them. So yeah, anyway, that's that answer to that question. So Apollo Gray has quite a few questions here. The first one being, what is it like living in a hostile environment hellbent on trying to kill you? Obviously talking about Australia, that's the joke. Everything's trying to kill you. The animals, the plants, the food, the whatever. Everything's going to kill you. From someone who's lived here pretty much my entire life, and like any other Australian, I would say that it's probably one of the safest places to live in the world. We do have, of course, our problems, and obviously we do have dangerous animals and things that happen, but I would say comparatively, it's the bad is totally, totally outweighed by the good. Usually when you hear about things happening to people here, whether it be like animal attack or whatever, it's generally tourists who don't have the common sense that Australians have grown up with. We don't have guns here, so I've never had to worry about going somewhere where there could be an active shooting. Especially where I live, it's really quiet. I live in a capital city, but we only have 1 million people. It doesn't feel like you're going to get lost amongst the crowd, and because of that, you know, because of a smaller population and because of a smaller like total population, our problems are that much smaller in comparison to other countries that have much larger populations. There's good and bads about every country. I would say, as somebody who spent over 25 years of my life in Australia, that I have never once felt like I've been in danger here, or like anything's actively trying to kill me. So that's my answer to that. I know that's sort of like a joke, but that's the truth of it. Apollo's second question is, how much annually do you spend on manga physically and digitally? Now, I'm going to go over this sort of in another question as well, because I got similar questions to this a couple other times, and I don't have like an active, I don't keep my receipts, and I don't keep an active ongoing ledger of everything that I spend. I couldn't give you a, you know, full number as how much I'm spending, but in general, I've mentioned this before, but when I budget, well, first off, when I get paid, it's on commission. So it's not the same set amount every single week or 2 weeks or whenever it is that I'm working. So I can't really depend on a certain amount of money coming in every single month or every single week. So what I do when I do get paid, I put, this is how it works for me. So generally I put in 50% of what I've earned into savings, and then with the rest of the 50%, the leftover, I pay my bills, and then anything that's left over is sort of my funny money. It's my play money. So that's what I spend on hobbies, or if I want to go out to eat or to see a film or whatever I want to do. That's where that money comes from. For some people, I would say it's probably better to, like, once you get paid, pay your bills, and then whatever is left over, you know, maybe put 30 into a savings account, and then the rest is stuff you can have to spend on hobbies. I also would say always try to keep at least, and I know it's so hard, like because people are working very, very hard for very little money, but I do try to keep like $100 in my account so I never overdraw my account. Easier said than done. I am very aware of that, but I think it's very important to budget it. Generally, my manga budget, I try to not go over 250 Australian dollars a month on manga. So that's roughly about $175 US. That's probably not totally accurate, but it's around there. And sometimes I pay a little bit more than that. Sometimes I don't spend nearly that amount of money. But I would definitely say never go, like if you have a hard limit, so like I'm only ever going to spend $100 or like $25 a week on manga, $100 a month, never go over that, because or never go over it by like a substantial amount. Never say like, okay, I'm only going to spend $100 a month, and then don't then go on and spend like $300, because that'll just make it easier for you next time to be like, well, I've already spent $300 once. I should be able to spend $300 every month. So don't do that. Yeah, my monthly is probably about 250 Australian dollars. Again, that it's dependent, because sometimes I do have like figures, which means that can double, but I don't really classify, because when I buy figures, I buy them in the spot, so it's not like money I have to necessarily plan to have. I don't know. That sometimes I goes into depending on how much like extra money I have in that month because of how hard I'm working or how well I'm being paid. So yeah, it's not an exact science for me, but I would say roughly $200 a month. You can do the math on that for a year. But every single person is different. They have different priorities, they have different responsibilities, and budgeting is your number one most important thing you need to do. Next are a bunch of mangaka that he wants me to name is most underrated male, most underrated female, most overrated male, most overrated female, and a virtually unknown mangaka. So for this, again, I had to write it down because I'm not going to come off the top of my head. The most underrated male mangaka, I would say, is Daisuke Igarashi of Children of the Sea. I absolutely adore this series. I do hope we see more of his works available in English. This particular book is so unlike so many other similar, well, really it's not really comparable to anything. It's so unique and such an exhilarating experience and such a almost literary experience. I would definitely liken it a lot more to a novel comparatively to like other types of manga. I do hope that the recent film adaptation of this particular series does mean that more people try the series out. And I really, really love how he does his art, how he does his character designs. It's just so, so beautiful and so, like, I don't know, just very evocative. It just captures so many emotions of summertime and of the ocean, and his color pages are just gorgeous. So that is my most underrated male mangaka, Daisuke Igarashi. My most underrated female mangaka is one who I talk about a lot, and maybe, I mean, it's so hard for me to be able to say like who's overrated, who's underrated, because my perspective and my perception of the manga community and what's being published is very different from sort of like the popular general opinion. So this mangaka is not someone who I feel necessarily is underrated. I mean, she's been nominated for an Eisner. There's almost all of her manga is available in English, but it's not someone I hear being talked about a whole lot, unless it's me or a few other manga tubers who are aware of her, and some like bloggers and stuff. But really, considering how much of her work is available in English, she's not someone that I hear spoken about a lot, and that is Fumi Yoshinaga. I've already mentioned she's one of my absolute favorite. I adore how she writes characters. Every single one of her books are great, including the BL. There are some of the BL that I'm like, it's fine, not really my thing. But most of them, even for their age, are like just astoundingly more competent than the other stuff that was coming out at the time. And Oku is one of her currently ongoing works. It's a historical drama about Japan being ruled by women after men have lost their lives due to a pox that only affects young men. She also has another ongoing series, What Did You Eat Yesterday?, which is about a gay couple in Tokyo and the meals they make together. It's definitely a food-driven manga. It's probably 70% recipe, or maybe even higher. But I adore both of those series. I'm collecting both of them, and I have all of her other works that are available in English. This, again, she is a fantastic artist. She is wonderful. Her character writing is beyond compare. I would say she's one that more and more people need to try out. Her work was the one that I gave as a recommendation for the buddy read when Bizarre Individual asked me to make a choice. I chose one of her works in that. So yes, I hope that more people do try her work, and hopefully she won't stay underrated by the vast majority of manga readers. Next is the most overrated male mangaka. Now, my choice is not going to be a surprise. I chose the Oba and Obata duo. I've said my piece on Oba before. I find his writing very samey. I feel like he has one idea that he's spun out 3 different times, and although there are certain differences, character type has not changed despite the genre differences. I really dislike how he writes women. I really dislike how he writes main characters and the genius complexes that he gives them a lot of the time. They always have to be right. They're always saving the day compared to everyone else who are just idiots. And I also really dislike a lot of just mean-spiritedness some of his works have, or all of his works have. I can't speak to Platinum End because I haven't read it, but even Death Note has this mean-spirited undercurrent to it, mainly helped by the misogyny. But there's a lot going on in those books, and I don't find him a particularly talented writer. I do feel like he had a huge hit with Death Note, which I will say, as I've said already in this video and numerous times before, I enjoy Death Note. It's not one that I would fault anyone for enjoying. I enjoy it myself. It's what got me into this hobby. But it is not a perfect series, and I despise Bakuman. Again, not something that is really a surprise if you've listened to me or heard my discussions on it. But I also wanted to mention for this most overrated male mangaka, not necessarily in particular to his entire body of work, but in one title in particular, and that is Usumaru Furuya for his work No Longer Human, the 3-volume manga adaptation of Osamu Dazai's short story or novel of the same name. No Longer Human is such a complicated piece to talk about, because not only is it Dazai's like one of his most well-known works, it is very dark, it's very much about the disaffected individual and feeling like you're out of place from society and being a monster in your own skin. So it is very complicated, and there's been numerous adaptations of it over the year, including multiple manga versions. Furia's has been the only manga adaptation that we've seen in English up until this year. We're getting Junji Ito's version soon. But because of that, and I think because it appeals a lot to the same sort of mindset as things like Goodnight Punpun and other various Inyo Asano works, that people want that series just to have that series or to say they've read that series. And I'm not saying it's a bad series, but I think that people put a lot of value into whether or not you've read or if you've owned that particular series. And considering it's incredibly out of print, I think it is just a measure of like superiority amongst certain collectors rather than legitimate like enjoying it for the right reasons. So yeah, maybe not entirely fair to add. I do like Furia's other work, in particular Genkaku Picasso, which is on Shonen Jump app, so check it out. It's pretty good. It's only 3 volumes. My sister's read that one. She likes that one. But yes, I find his work in regards to that particular series a little overblown. The most overrated female mangaka is actually another sort of controversial opinion here, but I would say Clamp. I have great respect for Clamp. They are a wonderful group of women who have put out a huge amount of work, and I will never begrudge them that. I just feel like because they have been sort of at the top of the mountain, so to speak, for so long, they are so well respected that they don't have they have almost too much creative liberty. They have almost too much creative freedom, and because of that, a lot of their titles sort of I feel like they would have done better if they'd had someone saying, that's a stupid idea, don't include that. If they had an editor who was like, just how about you don't do that thing, and then it'll be way more cohesive and it wouldn't become something that people are like, oh, I really enjoyed it, until the end got like really convoluted. It's a shame that seems to be the case with a lot of their manga, even their more recent manga. I haven't read a huge amount of Clamp. I have watched certain anime adaptations of their works. I'm not a huge expert on their stuff, but from what I have watched, what I have read, they have great ideas. They have some wonderful, wonderful stuff that they put out. But I do think that because of early hits, similar with Oba, they have the creative freedom to just do whatever they want. And unlike Oba, they're not just recycling the same story over and over again. Well, technically they are, considering the Clamp verse, but they do have other stuff and other characters and different things going on that's totally different genres, action, romance, sci-fi, you name it, they've done it. But I would say probably their greatest stuff has already, like, they had their stuff that is wonderful, and it seems to be sort of their earlier work that is the stuff that stands the test of time. And I enjoy things like Holic and Tsubasa, but the longer those series went on, almost the worse they got. And I feel like their newer series suffer from that as well. So I feel like, although I have huge respect for them as a creative group and as, successful mangaka, and the fact that they've managed to get to this point, I mean, my criticisms of them takes away nothing. If you love Clamp, if you adore them, fantastic. I'm super duper happy for you. But I do feel like that they have like 30% of their catalog that is like really great, really wonderful, should be read, very, very indicative of like the best of what can be done for manga or shoujo manga, or a women's group, or a mangaka group that started as a doujinshi group. The rest of it, the other 70%, is good ideas, good moments, but as a whole product, not so good, and maybe needed a rewrite or an editor to say, hey guys, good job, but how about we don't do that thing because that's dumb, or also very confusing, or also sort of betraying the reader's expectations. I don't know. I'm not a professional editor. I've done editing in a minimal capacity, but I do think that creatives, artists, need someone to be able to say, all right, don't do that. It's all right. Don't, no. So yeah, my thoughts on that. And my virtually unknown, I have a couple here, but I'm not going to actually, I changed my mind on them. They're usually, the three that I mentioned are Shiro Moria, Jin and Tsuyuki, and Kotono Kato, all who have various manga. Shiro Moria does Soloist in the Cage, which is a digital manga I've already mentioned in this video. It's on Manga Plus. Jin and Tsuyuki do Nirvana, which is a 4-volume sort of kind of a twist on a magical girl series. And then Kotono Kato does Atelier Battle of Records, or Record of Battles, whatever that is, which is another digital only title. But my actual answer for this is Keiko Tobei, who does With the Light. And this is the only one of her manga that is available in English. It is unlike a lot of manga in that it's educational, it's about autism and being a parent and being a family, and is very respectful about discussing things like developmental disorders and autism and things like that. And unfortunately, this is also the last series that she ever did because she died while she was making this manga. So very, very, I would say, deserving mangaka. It's a huge shame that she did die so young and while she was unable to complete the series. And it's also sort of a travesty that a lot of more people haven't tried this manga, because it is one that I think a lot of people could benefit from. So I do hope that more people try this one, and I hope that, you know, I hope that Tobei had a restful end of her life, because she deserved it. She seems like a really wonderful person who tried to do a lot of good for people and educate a lot of people on very important things. So yes, that's my virtually unknown mangaka. Takuto on Twitter, Takuto Anime Cafe, asked, what's one limited edition anime you wish you could own? And honestly, I don't have any, mainly because the good thing about prioritizing and only collecting things that you know you want, and for anime, I generally tend to only buy things that I've already watched, I already love, and if I love it enough, I'll buy the limited edition for it so I can save in advance and be like, yep, I want that. So I haven't actually missed out on any limited editions that I wanted. There are some that I hope in the future do get released. The ones that I'm super looking forward to, that's not a good sentence, but the ones that I'm really, really looking forward to a huge amount are the upcoming Anime Limited Silver Spoon Blu-ray releases, which aren't technically limited edition. I mean, they are, but they're also like standard Anime Limited sets, which with a chipboard outer set and then a digipack inside and also a booklet. And that's all I need. That's my perfect limited edition. I don't need stickers. I don't even need the soundtrack. I certainly do not need like little lanyards or keychains or this or that. If you got the discs on Blu-ray, preferably, it can be in a digipack or a normal case. I don't care. It's got a chipboard outer set. And yeah, if you want to chuck in a couple postcards, maybe a sticker, That's fine. I just don't want a wall blanket hanging thing in an extra box this thick full of guff that I don't want. I'm not a child, and I'm not a someone who actively collects a lot of merchandise for shows. I mean, you can see I buy figures. Like, I buy that sort of merchandise, but I don't buy like the hats or the wristband or my car. I've got certain things on my car, like my car keys, but they're not ones that I got from limited edition anime sets. So I don't actually have one previously released that I do not own. So, but thank you for that question, because it's really kind of the only question that I have gotten in regards to anime. Second question that Takuto asked was, why do you love Robotics Knights as much as you do? With the preface, or with the qualifier, that they also enjoy Robotics Knights a whole bunch, but you don't hear a lot of people talking about it, so I guess they find it fairly curious that I do mention it a lot. I honestly, like, one of my favorite parts of Robotics Knights is how grounded in reality the setting is. That series is meant to take place in current year 2019. When it first came out, that was far in the future, but you know, it's now, it's this year, and honestly, I think that a lot of the, you know, future tech, this future imagination of like what technology would be and what society would be, was very true to life, and I really respected it for that. I really enjoyed that it had a lot of virtual reality or augmented reality stuff. Everything they did was through their phones. They had a lot of stuff that is very reminiscent of, you know, Snapchat filters, of, you know, Pokemon Go and other games like that, mobile gaming. Part of that series is, you know, they make a giant robot, but because, like, in real life, you can't build a standing robot with like all of this heavy armor without putting in like really heavy rigging in there and a lot of like very serious engineering. And they're all just a bunch of high schoolers, so they make a frame and then they use AR to project through your phones what it's meant to look like. So, you know, if you have the app, you can just look at it and it'll look like it has all of its cool armor stuff on. And I found that like really interesting. And the fact that that's what is actually happening, that's actually very indicative of our life now, is crazy. Like, that's it. And that's why I respected it so much, even more so than, like, because, all right, like, being fair, all up, comparatively to Steins Gate, the mystery and sort of the even some of the characters aren't as strong as Steins Gate. I will give you that, but I really like I like the main guy. I like Akiko is the girl. I like Frau a whole bunch, and the other two are like, they're not really necessary for the series, but they're fun. I liked Honda, and Honda? No, Subaru. That's who it is. I think it's one of the car names. He has the car name. That's all I know. And they make a joke about it. It's Subaru because it's a Pleiades joke. But that, honestly, like, that's one of my biggest reasons as to why I like Robotics Knights so much. And I also liked how it ended. I liked that it wasn't, you know, super duper like, we have to save the world, everything's going wrong, the world's gonna die if we don't do it. There was elements of that, but I think also it was very grounded in like what high schoolers are actually able to achieve. So yeah, couple different reasons, probably no reasons that normal people would be like, I freaking love this show. But those are mine. And even now, I look back and I have more fond memories of Robotics Knights than I do with Steins Gate. And I do really enjoy Steins Gate, no question. But I love Miyano Mamoru's performance as the main character. There's a lot of really great stuff in Steins Gate, but I don't know. Snapchat filters. 2019. It came out in like 2012. So the fact that they were able to have such an accurate representation of the world and teens and their technology in 7 years, because technology changes a lot in 7 years, and it actually be the thing that is true, that's cool. That's really cool to me. But yeah, sorry, that's like such a weird, nerdy, dumb thing to be attached to with Robotics Knights. But hey, I like it, and I like most of the characters, or all of the characters, and it was just like pretty low key, and comparatively to Steins Gate, it's like so much more relaxing as well. So, you know. Now, Lita Kino, or Lita on YouTube and Twitter as well, she actually did these questions through Twitter, is what was one of your first manga purchases and do you still have it? Honestly, a lot of my first manga purchases I do not still own, mainly because they were Xiangyi releases. So I've either sold them on because I don't really enjoy them anymore, or I replaced them because Xiangyi went out of business and several of their series that they were putting out were later licensed by Viz. And I would say, I don't know if it's my absolute first manga purchase, but it's one of the first series that I started buying manga for, and that is After School Charisma, which is a sci-fi seinen about a school of clones of various notable historical figures. It's a solid little sci-fi. Definitely check it out if you like a sort of a twist on a historical fiction, but it's a sci-fi. Obviously the first volume I do own. I own that whole series now, but I used to own volumes 1 to 7 in the Xiangyi release. That would have been one of my first pickups, because I've mentioned this before, but when I was starting out buying manga, I was an anime fan first, and then so when I started actually reading manga, I only wanted to read manga that didn't have an anime adaptation, and especially one that I've seen, because I felt like there'd be too much crossover. Now I don't care. Like, I find them very complimentary, but yeah, sometimes I do still like prefer to have the anime versus the manga, or vice versa. But that was my reasoning for buying manga, because it's like, I don't want to buy the same thing twice. So yeah, that was probably one of the first that I had. The second question that you asked was, when you were younger, did you have friends you could talk about manga with? Not really manga, because similarly to my sister, all of my anime friends don't read a lot. They don't have a huge amount of like reading for pleasure. My best friend like refuses to read. I don't know what's wrong with her. Nothing. But for me, it was like honestly kind of odd, because I've grown up absolutely consuming novels. Like, it was my favorite thing to do before anime and manga, was reading fiction and non-fiction as well. I learned to read at age 3. And so by the time I was in like 6th, 7th grade, I was reading like a lot of things that other kids were reading that back then, like Harry Potter and Series of Unfortunate Events and Georgia Nicholson series and Artemis Fowl. But I also read like Anne of Green Gables and like some Bronte works, and a lot of like not stuff that the kids would be reading. So I've just read all sorts of things. When I was a really little kid, I used to only borrow non-fiction books from the library. I'd like bring home this compendium of marine life, or a book about like tornadoes and weather, or like these big fact binders full of all the different animal profiles. And I found that like really interesting. And honestly, to a certain extent, I still do. I'm like, oh man, I really want to read about, I don't know, whales. And that's maybe why I know a little bit about a lot of different things now. But yeah, most of my friends didn't read manga. They didn't read any sort of novel. So I didn't talk about manga with them. Even now I don't talk to manga with them. Really the only people that I speak about manga to, aside from my sister who reads it in her limited capacity, is one of her friends who, again, doesn't really read a lot of manga, but she does read some. And you guys. So, yeah, I'm not exactly in a position where I have like a huge manga community around me, and I think that a lot of people are like that. So, that was sort of one of the reasons that I started a manga channel, and because I want to talk about my favorite series. And a lot of forums and stuff don't talk about the series that I want to talk about. So, yeah, that's my answer to that question was no. Basically, no, I didn't have, and I still really don't, aside from you wonderful digital community. So, Whimsical Pictures asked on Twitter, do you have a mangaka that gets you the most? So, if you sat down and had coffee, you'd get along really well, you'd have a lot in common. I feel like if I had to narrow it down, I mean, honestly, Fumi Yoshinaga is like one of those where I feel like if I met her in real life, we'd have a lot to talk about. I think she has certain proclivities that I don't. She values some things that I don't, but I think we have very similar tastes in certain regards. I would also say Akiko Higashimura. I really respect her perception and her self-awareness of like her crazy fandom-y type of deal, as well as Junko, who has a lot of self-awareness and humor about her hobbies and, you know, being a fujoshi and all of these different things. I am not nearly to the level of them when it comes to being like a fan of certain things, but I feel like I could have a interesting conversation, and I think personality wise we'd probably get on pretty well. Aside from that, no one like honestly jumps to the forefront of my brain, but that's maybe because there's a lot of manga that I see lots of things about myself in, and the stories that I value. I feel like you can't write something that appeals to other people without also valuing that same thing. So honestly, like I would be happy to meet a multitude of mangaka. Yeah, generally though, I would say one of those three, because they seem like they're pretty they're pretty self-aware, and I am also fairly self-aware, hopefully, fingers crossed. And I think that of the stuff they write about, certainly certain themes are so relatable to myself and to a lot of other young people, and the way they can capture that is something that I hope I'd be able to have a good conversation about. But that probably does not answer your question at all, but those are really like the only ones that come to mind immediately. Sorry. So the other question that Whimsical Pictures asked was, how many countries have you been to, and do you have, or like, and what's a good memory from each of them? So I had to write them down because there's too many. Some of these I don't really have memories to share with because I was very young at the time, or just nothing that like super duper immediately jumps out at me as like, that was a really wonderful memory. So aside from the USA and Australia, I never really took like a vacation to Australia because I've lived here most of my life. I do take vacations to the US on rare circumstances. Last year or this year, last year, I don't know, one of them. Last year, not this year, was one of those occasions, and that was a really wonderful trip. That I was staying with family, and so I stayed with my aunt for a big chunk of it. Catalina Island was wonderful. going to the Disney parks is always really fun. We went all around, all over Los Angeles. You know, it is even like visiting my grandma in Vegas. I think we were there a little too long, too many days, but there's still interesting things to do. Honestly, out of that entire trip, and all of the wonderful things that my family took us to and did for us, that I'm just so grateful for, was my trip to the Grand Canyon, which was not planned. My sister and I were gifted by my uncle and his partner a bus trip to the Grand Canyon, and that was just incredible. I mention it on occasion, but I do actually have a degree in applied geology, so I'm a rock person. My sister is also currently getting her degree in geology, so she's even more of a rock person than I am. And I mean, even aside from the geology of the Grand Canyon, it's just such an immensely beautiful spot. And it wasn't something that we expected to do. And that was just like, yeah, out of this world. Honestly, one of the most thoughtful, wonderful gifts ever. Other countries, aside from those two places, I've been to France, and I don't really have many memories of this because I've been to France twice. Once when I was a tiny little baby, the second time when I was still a tiny little baby but older. I was probably like 5, 6. The only memory I have of France is that, you know those balls that like they are electronic, and then they have like a little fur, like it's meant to be like an animal, but it looks like a tail on it, and the ball moves, so it looks like this. It was like that. All I remember from that trip is that. But a story that my parents love to tell about my first time in France is that we were in Paris, and they were pushing the pram because I was a small baby, and everyone was laughing. And my parents were like, "What are they laughing at?" And they looked at me, and as a baby, I was sat in my pram. I had my sunglasses on because I don't mention this, but cause like I have very blue eyes and they're very sensitive to light. Even when I was a baby, like I'd close my eyes if it was too bright. My parents had to buy sunglasses because like she's not going to be able to see anything. She has to be alive and look into the world and learn. So they bought sunglasses for me at like 3 months old because I would close my eyes because it was so bright and then I just fall asleep. So they're like, we have to solve this. But I was in my pram, had my sunglasses on, and then I had both feet in my mouth, just sucking on my toes. And I was like, well, and everyone, all the French people were laughing at me. And I'm like, well, you know, sounds about right. The other story that similar is when the second time we went to France, we were in Paris again, and my sister was a baby this time, so she was in the pram, and the whole time she was walking, we were with my aunt and uncle, my parents were there, but the whole time she was just screaming, just a baby crying, and it was so loud, and like, oh my god, we couldn't stop anywhere because Em just wouldn't shut up. She just would cry the whole time. Yeah, yeah, so that was that story. Baby antics is our memories from France. I've also been to Switzerland. Another time when I was very young, I was 5 or 6, but I do have a memory of this one. I have a couple memories. One being at 6 years old, I suited myself up in all my snow gear, and I went out with my dad and my uncle and my 2 older male cousins with a snow shovel to help shovel the drive, because we were there for Christmas. We had rented a really fancy wood cabin, and they had a long driveway that went from like the road down to the house, and so it snowed and everyone's like going out to shovel, and I was just suited up, I had my gear on, I had my sunglasses on, and I had my shovel, and I was there like the whole 2 hours that they were doing it. They could not believe that I was like, yeah, I'm shoveling, I'm a big girl, I can do this. So yeah, that's one memory. And then my other memory is driving the road that connects Switzerland to like surrounding countries. So one day we actually drove from Switzerland to Italy for lunch, and I remember driving through the mountain, and there was a cutout like in the tunnel, and I could see the waterfall, and the sun hit it, and it was so beautiful. And yeah, so that's my other memory. I'm sorry that like my childhood memories are nothing super duper concrete though. Canada was a similar situation. We went there for Christmas. When I was younger, we did a lot of white Christmases. We, again, were with family, my aunt and uncle and my older cousins, and we had a log cabin in the snow. That was sort of the thing that we did when I was a child. Not anymore, because we're all old and have no money. But that Christmas, there was a particular time, because they had a big fancy screen, like a movie screen and a projector, and one morning I woke up before everyone else, and I went to the living room and I looked every door, and I turned the projector on, and I played Teletubbies, and I remember this really well. And I had it like pretty loud, and then so people are like waking up and like, what's going on? What's going on? And they were like, G, are you in there, G? And then I thought in my brain, in my small child brain, I thought that I'd be getting in trouble, so I hid behind the couch so they wouldn't catch me. And I looked every door, because this room, it had like, you know, it was sort of on the edge of the house. It was part of the house, but it opened up to verandas, and there was like this big connecting veranda. So there's like glass doors there as well. But so I looked the door that was connected to like the hallway. I looked all of the veranda doors. I looked every door. Nobody could get me out of there. And I was just in there for like 4 hours watching Teletubbies and like other kids programming. I was a rascal. Like I was a good kid, but I got up to some rascally stuff because I was too smart for my own good, I think. But yeah, that's my Canada memory. Costa Rica is a much more recent memory, because I was 18 when I went to Costa Rica, almost 19. I went there over the Christmas New Year's break for 5 weeks volunteering. It was an incredibly wonderful opportunity. It was with the student volunteer group, and we spent 1 week in San Jose, the capital, basically learning Spanish. I don't know Spanish, so don't ask me. Then we spent 2 weeks, because there was 50 of us, 50 Australian students from all over the country, and then we broke off into smaller groups for our volunteering work. And I was part of a community volunteering work. You could also do like environmental volunteering. But I was staying with a host family. We built a green filter. It was so much hard work, but it was so satisfying. We were with a host family. It was so wonderful, and spending Christmas there was so, like, honestly like one of my best memories. And the people who I met then, because I really didn't know anyone, have stayed friends. It's been 8 years since then. So yeah, I've made some great friends there. The rest of the trip, the last 2 weeks, we actually did more vacation-y stuff. We did like zip lining and whitewater rafting and surfing and so much fun stuff. So the whole trip really was wonderful, but my best memory would definitely be the volunteering portion of it, and how welcoming these families were to, open themselves up to complete strangers. There's a lot of really wonderful parts of that trip, but that was by far the best. After that is England. Last time I was in England was when I was 12, and my dad, his best friend, he and his family live in England, so we tend to visit them. We don't necessarily stay with them because if we're in London, we go to, you know, we stay in a hotel, but if we're in the town that they're living in, because they move around and they like renovate really fancy, nice houses and they sell them and they get a new one. But my memory, one of my best memories from that trip was getting a ammonite little fossil, like the shells, the swirly shells, in the hometown kind of the first woman geologist, really the woman who pioneered geology and paleontology. It's something that really inspired me to get my first degree and is still something I keep in my collection in my bedroom of non-anime manga stuff, and is something that I really hold dear, and is, yeah, it's really nice and really wonderful. And England is nice, but I wouldn't want to live there. I'm sorry to all of my British friends and subscribers. You have a lovely country, but I don't necessarily know if I would be able to handle it raining as often as it does. I like the rain, but I don't know. Not my cup of tea. Next is Italy. Same trip as when we went to England last. We were staying in Rome, so lots to do. We went and saw all the sites: Colosseum, Trevi Fountain, Spanish Steps, etc. But this is like such a weird memory, but we found a restaurant right behind, like at the bottom, hidden behind the Spanish Steps, and it was called the Steps for good reason, and we didn't eat anywhere else, at least for dinner, than that place. Because, okay, my sister is a very picky eater, so if we found somewhere she liked, we'd go there every time because we knew that there was something she liked there. She was a weird child, a very, very picky eater. But yeah, we went there every single night, and I had the best tiramisu. I had amazing, just everything. All the food was great. It was so yummy. And if I ever go back, I want to go see if that restaurant is still there. I hope it is, because they are very, very good. Next is Japan. Another very recent trip that was 2015. So a couple years ago now. I went there with my sister and her best friend for their combination graduation, 18th, and Christmas presents. I was sort of the chaperone, but I paid my way for that trip. And again, a trip where we did so many wonderful things. Probably my favorite was being in Nara for Obon and just seeing all of the different festivities that the various temples had. That also was the wonderful experience of me laughing at my sister and her friend trying to feed the deer and getting mobbed by them. I didn't do that because I knew I would get mobbed, so I was smart about it. I didn't want that to happen. But we did, again, so much stuff. We stayed in Tokyo, so we were in Ikebukuro. We were right near Sunshine City. We went to Ghibli Museum, we went to Tokyo Disney and Disney Sea. We went to outside of Tokyo, we went to Kyoto, which was beautiful. I love Kyoto, honestly. And Nara was when we went to that trip. We went to Koyasan, or Mount Koya, where we stayed with the monks overnight. That was really fun, in a actual temple. That was the only time we were in like a traditional inn. I mean, it's a temple, but like with traditional everything. We went also down to Osaka, and that couple days we were there, we took the Shinkansen down to Hiroshima and Miyajima. So we stuffed in a lot of things, a lot of places in the 3 weeks we were there. And if I went back, there's still so much more I want to do. So yeah, Japan, really, really wonderful place to visit. So much to do, always something going on. And I feel like every time you go there, there's something new and exciting. And every single city feels different as well. So yeah, if you're thinking about Japan, check it out. And, you know, go to multiple places, not just Tokyo. Then is South Korea, which was my most recent trip. I went there with my sister in September of last year. We were actually being hosted by my sister's friend Lisa and her family, who were so warm and welcoming and generous and lovely. The highlight would definitely be Chuseok, which is Korean Thanksgiving. They were so lovely, and it was such an opportunity. Like, honestly, I'm still in awe that they opened their home to us and opened their family and their traditions to us. It was not something I expected. I would have been totally happy to, spend time at the hotel, but they insisted, and they were just so generous, just so willing to look after us. And that's honestly like a lot of really good memories there. Every single day was fun, and it was only a week, but it felt like a month because of just how much we did. Everland is wonderful, although sometimes you're like, oh no, is this occupational health and safety certified? Yeah, if you like roller coasters, you'd be amiss to miss out on the T-Express, which is the world's highest wooden roller coaster. And also its longest, and also the wooden roller coaster with the world's sharpest drop. It's 70 degrees. I really like roller coasters. My sister doesn't. So yeah, that if you're like me, check it out. Although everything's in Korean, just be aware of that. It's not like Japan where you can kind of get away with not knowing Japanese, but Korean, it was so helpful to have a local who could speak the language. Also their food, like we ate so many times, honestly, like every hour. So, oh, are you hungry? You want some food? You want to eat this? I'm like, oh my gosh, so much food, and it's all delicious. So yeah, Korea, great place. Obviously South Korea. I've never been to North Korea, but I don't really plan on going to North Korea, and I wouldn't recommend it. Singapore is one that is probably more familiar to a lot of Australians. It's very close. It's actually in the same time zone as I am. I've been there a couple times. My aunt and uncle, a different aunt and uncle, lived there for a short while on the US Army base that is on there, military base. So they lived there a couple years. We visited them whilst they were there. But I've also been there like more so as a tourist. There's actually a jeweler's there, a goldsmith and jewelers, where my parents have bought all of my mother's jewelry from, all of her engagement rings, wedding rings. If she loses a diamond, if if it breaks or it needs readjusting, they always go there. And every year or so, every couple of years, my dad checks to see if the store is still there, to see if the owner's still there. And he is, and he's like 70 or 80. And my dad's like so happy because I honestly feel like he's going to be so upset when that poor little old man dies. Because that shop has so much significance to their relationship. But even aside from that, Singapore's lovely. It's very it's very similar to a lot of Southeast Asian countries, but in other ways it's very different. I would say it's probably one of the most westernized Southeast Asian countries. I have photos of the sea lion. I've eaten on the foreshore there. I've done a lot of stuff, but it's an interesting spot. I haven't been there in a long time though, probably 10-12 years, so my memory isn't super duper wonderful on that, there's no memory that immediately jumps out to me in regards to Singapore. So, but it is really great. Check it out. And their airport Terminal 3, good stuff. Indonesia is another very familiar place for a lot of Australians. I've only ever been to Bali, which is one of the islands that I think most people know in Indonesia. I've never been to Jakarta or Java or anything. It's also probably, the Balinese are lovely. They're such sweet people. Whenever we've been to Bali, because generally it's almost a joke that Australians go there every single year. Like, it's cheaper to go to Bali than to stay at home, because flights there, especially from my city, are so cheap, and everything there is really cheap. So a lot of like young people go there and like party and drink a lot and surf and, you know, all of that. I haven't been there in a long time, but when I do, I stay away from the other white people because they're just, they're not, you don't want to hang around them. And there's so much beautiful, beautiful things and places in Bali to enjoy that aren't just like the nightclubs. But yeah, some wonderful stuff. I had a cousin who had a wedding in Bali. That was one of the reasons I went. But even before that, I went on vacation, and you know, it's nice. It's a tropical resort. If you get a nice drink, if you buy the pool, and you can just relax. There's lots to do. I sometimes, as a child, I had to like be sure that I was holding on to a parent because everyone would touch my head for good luck because I was a blonde, blue-eyed child. But the bad thing, like the biggest downfall for Southeast Asia for me in general, and I love Southeast, like this is not actually a nitpick, but mosquitoes love me. So I'm always like covered, so absolutely bathed in Bushman's, like the mosquito repellent, and they still end up looking like I have chicken pox. It's honestly like really, really tough. But yeah. Bali's good. I can't speak to other parts of Indonesia, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of islands in Indonesia. So it's like the Philippines. You know, there's every place you go is different. But I've never been to the Philippines, so you know I can't actually speak to that. Hong Kong, I was there for a short time, the same trip as the Italy-Britain trip. And that was fun. That we went there for 3 days just for like jet lag, and so it meant we went to dinner like 3 a.m. every single night. And again, we went to the same place every single night because my sister found food that she liked. It was duck. We didn't tell her it was duck. We told her it was chicken, and she's like, "Oh my god, it's so yummy." And then on the last day, we told her it was duck, and she's like, "I don't care. I love duck now." And to this day, duck is her favorite meat to eat. So when we're like looking back on it, it's like it's very obvious that they probably had like illegal gambling in the back because that place was open 24/7. And if we were the dumb, you know, international visitor like the pawns to make it look like a legitimate restaurant, the food was good enough. I don't mind. They had some good stuff. But yeah, Hong Kong, that's my most vivid memory. I also remember walking the streets at like 6 a.m. and all the old people being out doing Tai Chi. So yeah. Thailand, I've been to multiple times. A lot of the times I've been to Phuket. I've also been to Bangkok. And they're both very different parts of the country, both very different cities. I have, at one of the hotels, or I guess resorts, we went to, because my aunt and uncle, the ones who lived in Singapore, my uncle has, I think, still timeshares with one of the hotels. So he'd get like, you know, trips. And so usually we'd be like, okay, here you go. Here's like 2 weeks in Phuket and you just have fun. And our hotel that we were at, it was a beachfront, and so private beachfront. And then they also had like an elephant handler, and he'd bring the baby elephant, and guests could pat the elephant and take pictures with the elephant and hug the elephant. And I don't know if I've mentioned it, but elephants are honestly like my favorite animal in the world. I love them so much. And the baby elephants are so cute. And Yeah, so Phuket was really wonderful. Bangkok, big city, lots to do. Great street food. We went on the river. Whenever we're in a Southeast Asian country, we're always like going on a boat onto the river. Um, we There's so much to do, and like a lot of times, because a lot of these trips I was a young person, so I'm not really in charge of what goes on. So sometimes like I just go with the plans. I'm just there for the ride, man. So I'm sorry if like some of these aren't really like specific memories as to like this event happened because we planned it, and it was this day, this time, and here's who was invited. I don't, too many. I don't know. But yeah, elephant riding, hugging, watching them paint was always good. Also, that hotel, it had a bar in the pool, which was pretty cool. So you could get like a drink and then be in the pool in your bathers, and there's a bar there, and you just drink in your drink. And yeah, that's a weird thing to remember as well. But yeah, hey, vacation. What are you gonna do? Finally is Vietnam. This was another volunteering trip that I actually took with my school. So I was with a bunch of my peers, a bunch of my classmates. None of them were really my friends. A couple of them I did know from primary school. And we spent 2 weeks, working and doing good work. So it was pilgrimage. So it was like a religious volunteering thing. I went to a religious high school. But honestly, and yeah, again, I really love volunteering. I love being able to do some good for the world because the world has done so much good for me. So I like to give back with my time and my energy and hard work, and have something tangible at the end of it. So Vietnam, we worked in an orphanage for the entirety of the 2 weeks. We also helped with a vocational school. We were painting some of their building for them and building a garden. We also worked in an AIDS sort of settlement. So there was a lot of people who are suffering from HIV and AIDS, and a lot of kids who are orphans and who also have it. Very sad stuff, very sad stuff. But you really gain some perspective on your life when you're confronted with those sorts of things, and the amount of gratitude that I have for my place and the privileges that I've had growing up is like, yeah, you gain a huge perspective on your life when you put yourself in those positions, and you do want to help and do go outside of your community and of the people you generally interact with. And I think for me, it was maybe a better opportunity and a better experience compared to everyone else I was there with, because they were all friends and they were all like having a vacation overseas with their friends. I wasn't really their friend. And afterwards I wasn't their friend either. So I think I found a lot more value, and I took the whole trip a bit more seriously than they did. I'm not going to say they didn't take this trip seriously. I don't know. But I feel like because I wasn't, hanging out with my besties, there was more that I enjoyed from actually being in Vietnam and helping and doing things. So yeah, that's all of the countries that I've been to, aside from Vatican City. But I mean, I don't really have a memory of that aside from going in the Vatican and seeing all the paintings and like the sculptures and stuff, which is nice, but I'm not going to count it. You don't need to hear about the Vatican. It's a place. It's got the Pope in it. It was before the cool Pope. It was before the bad Pope, before the cool Pope. It was like 3 popes ago. So, don't worry about it. Thank you for some great questions, but that was a super long time to be talking about countries. I hope that was somewhat interesting to you guys. Now I've got some questions from Mr. Zen Lopez on Twitter, and he asked, what will you do at 300 subs? I don't know. Honestly, I barely had an idea for what I was going to do for 2,500 subs. I have 500 more subs to wait until I have to think about that one. So if you guys have ideas, maybe leave a comment. That'd be good, because I don't want to just do another Q&A. That's boring. I don't want to do a collection video, because I'm going to do that anyway. So give me some good ideas, because I'm not always an ideas person. His second question is, if you were to write your own manga, what would it be about? So I don't really have any delusions of being able to make a comic. I honestly don't even write fiction a huge amount. My degree is in writing, but it's more so professional writing and editing. So I do like business reports and stuff, not like, oh yes, the latest fantasy epic. But honestly, the only thing that I could see myself writing in a fictional sense within fiction is, and it could also work as a manga, is like things that are, I've always had this idea where I have a character who, like in the manga I mentioned, I wish was licensed, but not exactly the same, is a inn owner, or in a city where, or like a town, a seaside town or whatever. It doesn't have to be set in our world as we know it, but not too out there with fantasy or anything like that. It could be in a historical context as well. That in owner, you get a lot of travelers, and each chapter, that's sort of the framing device, and each chapter is an individual short story about a particular guest and their life and their experience and what brought them to this town, or where they're going from this town. And I've seen this idea done before, and probably in a way that was way better than I could ever do it. But that's always, like, honestly, I feel like I had a dream about it when I was in high school, and it's something that's always been percolating in my brain. So if I ever put out a novel, it would be more so like a collection of short stories that are loosely interwoven with this framing device of a taverness, or a host, like an owner. That's the word I'm looking for. An owner of an inn. And maybe her own adventure, her own travel and obviously I've spoken half an hour about like my traveling and all of the different experiences that I've had, and I could only, like, I like reading travelogues as well, so I feel like that's something I could write about in a fictional sense or a non-fictional sense as well. Not that I'm publishing memoir, so don't be holding your breath for that. But that's something that, if I ever was, had a gun to my head, told to make a comic, a manga, that's the idea that I'd go with, because it's the one that I've been building and living in my brain for as long as it has. Last question is, if you were a voice actor, what kind of character would you like to voice? Now, I feel like, oh, no, you have a couple other questions. They were just on the other page, so this is not your last questions then. But if I was a voice actor and I had a particular character type that I want to voice, would probably be like that, the friend, not the main character, but like the main character's friend, who's the voice of reason, who's just like, dude, stop being an idiot, just do the thing, ask him out, or communicate, do the thing. Like, I'd just be the supporting friend character. Or if you're like, it's a club, like it's a school club, I'd be like that mom friend who like looks after everyone, who everyone's like, oh my gosh, thank you for always having everything prepared, because that's sort of just who I am, my personality. But I would honestly love, because I'm not a voice actress. I don't have any delusions of ever being a voice actress, but it would be fun to voice a villain, and I think a lot of actors and actresses really want to do like more villainous roles, because you can have a lot more fun with them as well. But I think if I was ever a voice actor, I would be like typecasted to that one supportive friend, like that one friend who's not the main character, but is the voice of reason. Like, stop being an idiot, do the thing, just do it. Yeah, so any YouTuber in the community you would like to interview. Now, I don't really have a platform to interview people, but honestly, I don't know. There's a lot of YouTubers, a lot of manga tubers who I would expect have an interesting experience to share, but I feel like there's so many other people doing this type of stuff, and they are very well established, they're very talented at it. I'm not really needed in that sense. Outside of MangaTube, I think there are certain creators that I would find very funny to have a conversation with, or very interesting to have a conversation with. I watch a lot of like true crime on YouTube, so that's a little something about me. But some of the women who talk about true crime, I think would be interesting to have a discussion with, as to like how they got into true crime, why they make videos about it, what about it is so appealing to them. People like Eleanor Neal or Stephanie, what's her name? Stephanie Harlow. Those two are my favorite. But there's a lot of, there's Kendall Ray and Danielle, someone or other. More so Eleanor Neal and Stephanie, whatever her name is, Harlow, Stephanie Harlow. I'd like to interview because they seem interesting and very knowledgeable about what they speak about and very passionate about what they speak about. But yeah, that's probably not something that anyone on this channel would be interested in hearing. Yeah, and inside the community, like the manga community, I don't know, probably someone who has like very similar, honestly, but I hate, because I see her as a friend, so I don't like to put friends in like, I'm interviewing you, this is an interview, treat it as such, because I don't like to, it just feels weird to me. But like, Whimsical Pictures is always wonderful to have discussions with, and I think we'd get along. I know we get along. But having like a more structured conversation, I think a lot could be said and discussed about certain topics that even current like podcasts and stuff don't cover. So that'd be good. And then just, whoever else. Anyone. I'd speak to anyone, but I'm not very good at this. So yeah. And then your actual final question this time is, does NASCAR exist in Australia? I think it does. I don't think it's under that name. I know we have Formula One here, or at least we have like big Formula One competitions. And I know of like NASCAR-esque type of car like races exist, but I'm not in the community to know what that is, or who's competing, or what it involves, or where it happens. So yeah, yes, but also I'm not the person to ask about that. Next are some questions from Alonzi on Twitter. He asks, what made you start a channel and what keeps you going? So what made me start a channel was the fact that as a manga fan and as somebody who watched other MangaTube people, I came in sort of, it's 4 years now. This month has been my 4-year anniversary. It was before a lot of the current MangaTube people were doing it. It was before, now we have booktuber people who are talking about manga. We have a lot of new faces, and people, like, there's this cycle of people coming in and leaving the community. There's really only like Code Provider and Insidious Suite, I think, was around. Fatal Ferret might have been around. And NZ Anime and Manga. But they were all people who I didn't really... They didn't talk about things that I was reading or that I cared enough about. Like, they have series that they love, but our tastes are very, very different. And I saw an opportunity in that I wanted to talk about things that I enjoy that maybe other people don't know about. And I decided to start the channel. I didn't expect anyone to really watch, but I realized that, at least in my limited perception of the community at the time, there wasn't a lot of girls around and talking about manga, and I think there was definitely the stigma of like, nobody's gonna watch girls because they just talk about shoujo, and you know, there's nothing really to be gained from that because a lot of the community is guys, and a lot of people just watch guys because they get all the popular stuff. And so that was sort of why I started a channel. As well, I mean, I started the channel a long time ago, but that's why I restarted this channel. And surprisingly, amazingly, you guys seem to enjoy it, and you guys are what keeps me going, because if I didn't have an audience, I feel like I would still make videos, but I wouldn't necessarily and I don't put like a huge amount of time and energy into these. Sorry. But it's not something that it's getting dark, so apologies. I'm going to try and get these last questions out quickly. But yeah, that was what made me start, and then you guys and this community and the support, just again, 2,500 subscribers in 4 years is crazy. So that's what keeps me going, and my enjoyment. Even if I wasn't making videos, I'd be enjoying manga and watching anime and wanting to talk about it. And I think that's the other thing, is that's what keeps me going, is I want an outlet and a platform to talk about it, and YouTube has granted me that. And I talk more so about specifics and things on Twitter now, but I didn't have Twitter then, and I wouldn't have probably ever had Twitter if I didn't have YouTube. So, you know. Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 more people's questions. So Shay from Shay Geeks Out on Twitter asks, and YouTube asks, what series started your manga collection? Sort of already answered that one with After School Charisma. Another one that I started with was Genkaku Picasso, which I've already mentioned again here. And I feel like Chrono Crusade was maybe one of the earlier ones that I started as well. So those types of things. She also asked, what's a series you recommend everyone to check out? Definitely Natsume's Book of Friends, one of my absolute favorites, and one that everyone should read. One that's suitable from, 4 years old to 94 years old. So yeah, check that out. And do I love where I live? I mean, it has its goods and its bads, and I feel like I've lived here so long that I'm ready for a change, but I appreciate and respect where I grew up and where I live in the community that I've lived in for so long. Do I love it? Some days, yes. Do I hate it some days? Absolutely. But overall, I'd say I do. I love it, and I'm very lucky to live where I do and with the people I do. So, yeah. Thank you for those questions. Sorry I kind of rushed through those, but I need to change the lighting now. Okay, we have some gross lighting now. This is why I never film at nighttime, because the lighting in here is not always super wonderful. But I have Aria the cat on YouTube asked me, what are my favorite anime? There's a lot of crossover here with like my favorite manga. So things like both versions of Full Metal Alchemist, both versions of Hunter x Hunter. Yuri on Ice is one. Free. Mob Psycho 100, Not So Nice Book of Friends, of course, Chihaya Furu, of course, as well. Things like The Eccentric Family, Humanity Has Declined, Baccano, Brazophon, I really enjoy, and Wolf's Rain is a newer one that I fell in love with. There's so many. I can't really. 12 Kingdoms, very good anime adaptation, although fairly incomplete. Princess Jellyfish, that honestly, the anime is what got me into being aware that josei was a thing. So that's a really important one to me. Space Brothers as well. Descending Stories, Silver Spoon. There's a lot of series that I talk about a lot in regards to the manga, but my love for them also extend to the anime as well. The recent Land of the Lustrous anime is a great example of that. There's so many wonderful shows out there, and I'm sorry that that wasn't sort of a more structured list to follow, but those are definitely some that I always really love and go back to. Hyoka is another one. Like, out of all of the Kyoto Animation stuff that I've seen, and I've seen a fair chunk of it, and for as much as I love Free, for various reasons, Hyoka is by far my favorite Kyoani show. So yeah, hopefully maybe that gives you an indication of my tastes. I like certain things and certain parts of stories, character writing, things like that, that aren't necessarily indicative of like genre. My tastes are very wide, but yeah, hopefully that gives some context. Although it is a little bit like, oh, I like this thing and everything. Descending Stories is also one that you should be trying out. I don't know if I already mentioned that. Maybe. Who knows? So, Cringed Crisps, again from YouTube, asked, have I ever considered ASMR or doing ASMR? Because my voice is really soothing. And that is such a kind thing to say, Cringed Crisps. I have not considered ASMR, mainly because I don't know very much about it. I don't partake in it myself. All I know is it's like a bunch of whispering, and then you tap the thing, and then you cut the hair, and you have a brush and you put it on the microphone, and it tingles up into your hair, and it gives you good feelings. And unfortunately, I don't really know a huge amount. As I said, aside from just like what people I've seen commenting about ASMR. So maybe if this whole dang manga thing doesn't work out, I'll open an ASMR channel. But until then, thank you for the lovely compliment about my voice. I hope my videos are soothing to listen to, but there's no real plans in starting to, whisper into the microphone any more than I do generally. So yes, and then your other question was my favorite shoujo and shonen manga. This is hard. I would say, like, if we're talking about pretty standard shonen or like weekly shonen jump stuff, I would say probably Hunter x Hunter is my favorite shonen. Fullmetal Alchemist sort of like goes without saying. It's one of my absolute favorite manga series of all time, and I really love it. But I also like sort of like unconventional shonens, things like Pandora Hearts and Black Butler and Nabari no O as well. You guys know this, obviously. Like, if I don't know. I also, and then your other question, favorite shoujo. Again, if we're talking about like very bog standard, like what people immediately think of when we talk about shoujo manga, I would say probably Lovecom or Lovely Complex. like the high school romance type of thing. I like things like Requiem of the Rose King. That's really, 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 really good. Banana Fish is solid, although I wouldn't say it's my favorite. It is definitely one that I would recommend a lot of people read, most people read. Maybe Flower of Life, that's a shoujo, right? Totally one that nobody's read or even heard of. That's a Fumi Yoshinaga series. It's 4 volumes long. It has things that, if it was written by anyone else, I would have too many problems with it. But because it's Yoshinaga, the way she writes it and the way she handles it is done so well. The thing I'm talking about is a student and teacher relationship. Because there's good ways to handle it, like with Yoshinaga, in realizing, oh, this is not a good thing. We shouldn't be doing this. But also humans are complicated creatures, and also, there's sometimes people just mess up. And also that's not the focus of that series. But then there's also bad ways to do that sort of thing, like Clamp. Thanks, guys. Didn't want a relationship in Cardcaptor Sakura between an 8-year-old and like a 27-year-old, but you gave it to me anyway. Didn't want that, but that's the thing that happened, and it's creepy. No, I'm sorry. Fate does not excuse that. That's it. That's all I'm gonna answer to that. And then Steve M, also from YouTube, asked, when did you start reading manga? I started reading manga probably my first year of university. So I was 18. I probably got more into it because I did a year of university at one university, and then I took a year off, and then I switched universities, and since then I've been at the same university. But so probably like 18, 19, so that first year of university and then that year off is when I really got more into reading manga, especially the year off because I had way more time. Yeah, I didn't get into manga until late. Like, I didn't get into anime till late. So, that's that. When did you seriously start collecting manga? Probably the same time. I honestly didn't read scans, or I'm not going to say I've never read scans because that's a lie, but if I knew something was available legally, I would buy it. And I also, because when I started started this channel, like when the sustain the industry was going on, that's sort of like what inspired me to start the channel. So I was always of this mindset of put your money where your mouth is, support the things you love, support the creators you love. It's a hobby, and if you can't afford it, it doesn't mean you should be able to read it or watch it illegally or for free, because it's a hobby. It's not a need, it's a want, which some people may disagree with me on, but that was my mindset going into it. So almost everything that I've read, I was collecting, and since starting this channel, I would say that my collecting, like month to month, has definitely become more serious or something, more regular. But at the same time, I was probably getting a similar amount, maybe a little bit less per month / per week that I'm getting now. So not much has changed that the YouTube channel has done, but maybe like, 2015 was, I'd say probably like 2013 was when I started more seriously collecting manga. Whenever I got this room was probably when I more seriously started collecting. And that was a while ago now, so yeah, probably 2013. Top 10 manga series, ongoing or completed. Fullmetal Alchemist. Ding. Hunter x Hunter. Ding. Chihaya Furu. Descending Stories. Mushishi. Whew, that's 5. I'm trying to think of what I haven't said yet. Either, I'd probably say Wandering Sun, but Sweet Blue Flowers also goes under this. A Bride Story. Can't forget. Yeah, something by Fumi Yoshinaga. Probably like Ooku. I'd probably say Ooku, but What Did You Eat Yesterday is also like a pretty strong like secondary going to. I don't know. I need 2 more. 2 more. As for ongoing, because like honestly, I'm not. If I'm buying it, I'm enjoying it. But top 10 is like the thing is, you're like ongoing or completed. So that's like, oh, everything, just everything, every manga. And I know you mean like in English, legally published, but anything that I'm reading. Last 2, I don't know, Land of the Lustrous and Our Dreams at Dusk. That easy, cool. That's really off the top of my head choices for all of those. I think some are more obvious than not. Did I say Natsume? I hope I said Natsume because that would be a travesty if I didn't say Natsume. If I didn't say Natsume, it's in there. That'd be my top 11. No, I think it's so hard for me to narrow down like, oh, my top 10 favorite things of all time, because so many series I enjoy for different reasons. If you're like, oh, your top 10 romance series, I'd be like, oh, okay, cool. I know that's easier for me to do. Or your top 10 sci-fi series, I'd be like, well, I only got 3 because I don't read a lot of sci-fi. But top 10 like of all time would probably be a lot of the series that I mentioned already. There's a lot of crossover because obviously I enjoy these things regardless of it's animated or just in comic form. So yeah, sorry that's again like a really off the cuff sort of answer, but those are the ones that immediately came to mind. How much do you spend per month? Is it hard to find a balance? Again, I answered this about 200, 250 Australian dollars. You do the calculation as to US or Canadian or whatever it is that you have. And I only do that because I do have a fairly stable job. I don't get paid the same amount every single week or whatever, but I'm not fearful of losing my job. I do have the extra money to spend. If I didn't have the money to spend, it would be far, far lower. And is it hard to find a balance? For me, I've always made sure that this is a secondary priority to the rest of my life. I find like actually filming and doing YouTube stuff probably harder, considering like YouTube, or not YouTube, uni and work and actually reading all of the stuff that I have is like, that's a hard balance to do because I'm like, oh no, I should probably do a video. It's been a week and a half. I don't have a schedule, as you guys probably realize. I'm sorry, I'm such a bad YouTuber. But yeah, I think you need to make sure you prioritize. You need to know what's important to you, and if you want to have a balance and be able to stick to that balance, you have to maintain very strict boundaries with yourself, and you have to be, truthful to yourself. If you know that you're not going to be responsible by having all of your money available to at all times, like as soon as you get paid, you're going to spend all of that whole money, step away from this hobby. Because don't go to a bookstore, because I know there's plenty of people who go to the bookstore, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna get one book, and then they buy like 10, or they buy like a bunch and then they immediately go out to buy more because they want more. And I'm like, that cool. If you can afford that, that's cool. But like, I can't. I find it a bit concerning if all of your money is going to this hobby. I have some other hobbies, but I like to do other stuff. Like I like to go to the movies. I don't eat out that often, but I don't want my whole life to just be this. And a lot of my friends some of my friends don't even know I'm all into all of this. And it's not that I keep it hidden per se, but I want to be a well-rounded human being. So I think that finding a balance between your hobbies and the rest of your life is important. And that's maybe not the balance you were asking about, but that's the balance I'm answering about. Finally, I have Hans, I believe, Hans asking, do you like different types of mangas depending on your state of mind or your mood? Yes, I'm sort of the opinion that for a manga to be successful, it has to emotionally engage me. And so that means I get swept up in the emotion regardless of what my prior emotion was. So I'm not really someone who's like, I have to be in a mindset to read, I don't know, Pluto. I need to be in a mindset to read this certain author's works. And the only real, thing that I feel like I do for that is Inyo Asano's work, but it's also why I didn't like things like the series Goodnight Punpun. It's why I don't like to read a lot of very depressive stories, because I'm a very emotive person and someone who gets very attached to series, and I feel like even if I'm not in a bad mindset or like a depressive mindset, and thankfully I am very rarely in that mindset, it will make me feel that way, and I don't like feeling that way. So it's not, those stories have their place, and I understand everyone who finds them appealing and enjoyable and can attach themselves to that. But I prefer to have, and they don't have to be positive emotions, but I prefer to have series that at the end of the day, I don't feel like bad about myself reading them, or I feel worse about the world in reading them, because fundamentally, manga for me, like movies for me, and this may be completely like, I don't know, like uncritical way to look at things, but they're entertainment, and I don't have a huge amount of time in my life, so I prefer to enjoy the things that I read rather than read them and then feel like I want to die. Then why am I reading it if I'm just going to be upset at the end? And as I said, not everything that I read is inherently like all good and wonderful and, oh, I'm so uplifted at the end. Only positivity in my world. It's not like I distance myself from dark themes or anything like that, but I do like to have hope in my stories, and I can survive them that way. As for, do I like different types of manga depending on your state of mind or mood? In some ways, yes. In other ways, no. I think anime more so for me, this applies, because there's something, but I don't even know if it's a state of mind I have to be in or just my expectations of that show, because there's some series that I watch genuinely loving everything that series does, whether it's like Fullmetal Alchemist or Mob Psycho 100 or Descending Stories. They're series that I can engage in critically, and I can engage in on more like a personal and emotional level, and enjoy and go back to and have lots to think about and have fun with. But then there's also things that I'm in a different state of mind insofar as like, I just want something dumb to watch. I just want to be like, oh my god, this is so stupid. And normally that show for me is Uda no Prince Sama. That show is so dumb, but I enjoy it a lot. But that, again, that's like my expectation. I'm going into it knowing that it's dumb, and that's exactly what I want. That sort of cheesy, stupid otome wish fulfillment fantasy. And honestly, the only reason I watch it is because of voice actors. And it's just, oh my god, there's so much dumb stuff about that show. But I love it. And I think in that sense, yes, I have to be in a particular state of mind to read or watch, I guess, in that case. But as for other stuff, like, I don't know, probably not. Because if I'm not already in that state of mind, then I will be after reading it. So, yeah, I hope that answered your question, because if it didn't, I'm sorry. So, that is everything. That's all the questions. There's a lot. Thank you guys so much for sending in so many wonderful questions. I hope I answered them to the best of my ability, and I hope they were interesting. I'm sorry about the lighting. It is now nighttime, kind of. So it's gotten very dark here. But I really, you guys, honestly, the fact that I'm at 2,500 subscribers is something I never expected for this channel, and I wouldn't be here without you guys and your support and your commenting and how often you reach out to me, whether here or on Twitter. Your constant support, your wonderful, wonderful just attitude and discussion that you have with me, and I have never felt more happy to be in a community, and I feel like I'm glad that I started this channel and decided to join this community and start this discussion and make my own place here. I hope that in the future going forward, I can continue to grow. It's weird looking at my analytics because honestly, like 50% of the people who watch my videos are not subscribed to me, which is surprising. And I hope some of them join but I understand if people don't, because my videos are very specific. They are a lot of work, a lot of time, not on my, well, I mean, my time, yes, but not on my behalf, but to sit down and watch a 40-odd minute video is a big ask, and the fact that so many of you have commit to that, and I recognize so many people, and I know who is watching my videos, and it's just honestly astounds me. Like, I cannot put into words how grateful I am to all of you, to all of your support, and to how welcoming and wonderful and lovely everyone in this community has always been to me. The fact that people seem to have this weird respect for me, in which I don't deserve, but that's very kind of you guys. It's made me happy that I can say 4 years ago I put out a video that objectively is terrible. And it's from there I've grown so much as not only a channel but a person, and the fact that I'm still able to sit down like this and have you guys listening and have you guys commenting and have you guys interested in what I have to say in regards to both manga, anime, whatever else, and it means the world to me. I mentioned in some of the questions, like, I don't have a community around me where I can discuss manga in particular, anime more so, but not manga. And so all of you are that for me. And I mean, the fact that like 2,500 people is so many people. That's more than the entirety of my high school had. That's so many people. Like the amount of people most people know in their lives number about 150, 200 people. I have 10 times that amount watching me, and that's just incredible. As I said, I never expected this, and if my channel didn't gain a single subscriber after this point, I still would never be able to thank you guys or say, or even feel like I deserve this amount of success and this amount of support from you. I'm so happy that my videos seem to be interesting and engaging and helpful for so many people, and that I was able to do what I wanted when I started this video and talk about the things, or talk when I started this channel, just talk about series I love, and that maybe start some discussion, make people aware of some manga they aren't aware of, and to open up people's eyes to all of the different types of demographics, all the types of different genres, and all the different types of creators that are available in this wonderful, wonderful community. And the manga industry itself has changed so much in the time that I've been here. I can only imagine what it'll be like in another 4 years, in another 2,500 subscribers. If I get to that point, I don't know what I would do, but something that'll always be true is that this is not my success, it's your success. And the fact that I've had so much, like this, I haven't done anything to deserve this. And all I can say is thank you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. 2,500 subscribers was not something I thought was possible, but here we are. And I can only hope that I'll still be here in a year, in 3 years. Whatever happens right now, thank you so much. And I'll catch you in my next video, guys. Bye till then.